And welcome back to yet another episode. We are on episode 47 of Raise the Banner podcast. I am one of your co-hosts as usual, Matt Couture, here with Zach Brewitt and Benny Ballgame Dearth. Benny, how you doing? I see your what is it? Which FSU sweatshirt?
Yeah,
They
they.
got their ass kicked this weekend.
I wouldn't say they got their ass kicked. They definitely did not
Well,
play very well at
comparatively
all.
of what they were supposed to do.
I'm not a DJU fan. I don't know what all the hype around him is. He's fallen flat on his face everywhere he's gone. He had a decent year in Oregon last year, but things are good. Gonna go. I have tickets to the Sox game tomorrow. Hopefully they don't disappoint. But at least the Patriots season's right around the corner, and hopefully in the next, it's 6:00. I don't know. Hopefully in the next few hours we have an answer on who the starting quarterback is for
Oh,
Cincinnati.
no shot.
We're on to Cincinnati. We're
Not going to hear until at least tomorrow night, I don't think.
Oh, I thought they said Monday night. No, well, whatever.
After cuts. They said they want to get through
tomorrow at 4.
Yeah, so they want to get through cuts and then
yeah, that's right. He wants to make the cuts and then tell the team and then go public with it. I forgot. That's right.
So I would guess either Tuesday night, I would probably guess Wednesday morning, is when it's announced. At least maybe something leaks out, I guess, on tomorrow night. But anyways, I do want to start off with the Boston Red Sox. They are on a 4-game skid. They had a resume game today from earlier in the year against the Blue Jays at 2:00. They lost that, and so they've lost 4 straight. They got another game starting in about an hour. Basically, how are we feeling? I mean, things are not doing very good. Do you see a window where they can kind of turn it around, or are you kind of thinking that they're done here? I'll start with you, Zach.
I officially think I might be declaring them done. It's just another season. I think we talked about it last podcast where just like Alex Cora's teams don't do very well in August, and we're seeing another one this year. So I'm focusing most of my attention on 2025 and kind of maybe the end of this year if they want to bring up some of those big prospects. But yeah, for the most part, I don't think that Slayton and Liam Hendricks are going to make like a huge difference in terms of making up ground in the race here. I mean, they might win a couple games, here and there. They might shore up the bullpen. But for the most part, I think there's a lot more holes on this team, and especially on the pitching staff, than just those two guys. The starters, like we talked about on a couple podcasts, have just been consistently going downhill. Hauk again, was it yesterday? I forget who played two pitch today, but like overall, all of our steam that we had in the beginning of the season, and even a little bit outside of the, after the All-Star break, has just completely been evaporated. So I'm about 98% ready to close the door. So I've been here before. I've seen this team before. With last year and the year before. So I'm pretty close to calling them done.
All right, that's fair enough. Ben, how about you? Where are you at?
It's not good. I would say I don't think the window's closed, but it's damn close to being closed. They, oddly enough, the 1:00 game did not count against their losing streak. It counted back in June, which is weird. They're still only on a 3-game losing streak, but
technically, I'll count. It's a 4-game losing streak to me.
Yeah, it's par for the course this time of year. And the only reason I don't think it's necessarily done for, is Minnesota hasn't played that much better in their last 10. Minnesota's 5-5. The Sox are 4-6. And 4.5 games over the last, call it 36 days of the year, whatever that number is. Not necessarily insurmountable. We've seen bigger leads disappear. But it doesn't look great. So not looking promising. They're at a point where they're 14 games under 500 against teams with a winning record. So, doesn't bode well. If they get in, I think they'd probably draw Houston in the first round. And they don't really match up well against them. But unfortunately, they're kind of fading. I think the injuries in an odd way kind of caught up to them where, not saying Lucas Giolito makes them a playoff team, but over the course of a year, maybe he's the difference maker in a couple spots in the rotation. Obviously Houck is blown past his career high in terms of innings in a season. And so, not promising, but, the window's still open a teeny tiny bit, but, this time next week, I could be saying, it's definitely over.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of giving a percentage window wise, it's probably 75% over, or the window's about 75% closed. Like you said, I mean, there's still about 5 weeks left of baseball, and a lot can come. 5 weeks and you're 4.5 games out or 5 games out. That's one game per week. That's not anything incredibly crazy to imagine. But obviously, the Royals are a pretty good team. The Twins are overall a pretty solid team. So I'm not overly optimistic. The downside for me really, you mentioned Lucas Giolito, and he doesn't make a big difference in the big picture when you think about what he could have been for this team. But does Lucas Giolito give this team an extra 2 wins than where they're at now? A workhorse, solid middle of the rotation guy. Does he give an extra 2 or 3 wins right now? Maybe. So it's obviously not kind of making excuses for this team. But they're kind of where they are because of their pitching. I think we all kind of agree with that. And it really comes down to they didn't have enough depth. And the guys that they asked to show up didn't show up much this year. Bello has been up and down. He has some good outings. He has some bad outings. Pavetta's exactly what Pavetta's always been. He'll come out in a game and give you 6 innings, 2 runs, and then he'll come out and give you 5 innings, 5 runs. You never really kind of know exactly what you're going to get from him. He battles, and I respect that, but he's an up and down. Crawford, same thing. He went through a stretch. He's been a little bit better here the last couple outings, but he went through a stretch where I think he let up 11 home runs in 4 outings or something like that. Good. Yeah, you can't have that and expect to win. Their lineup's been holding things down and keeping them in games for the most part. Yoshida has turned the light on, and in terms of getting a guy out, he's been probably top 5 in the MLB over the last 2 months. I believe since June 1st, he has, I think it's the 3rd or 4th highest OBP in baseball. So, like I said, in terms of getting the guy out, he's not going to give you ton of power, but in terms of getting a guy out, keeping him off the base path, he's been outstanding. Casas is back. They've kind of just run out of steam. We've been saying that they're a middle of the pack team all year, and we were worried. You mentioned Houck's inning limitations from previous years. That's what I kind of see. I think guys like Crawford and Houck have been shaky the last few months because they're kind of out of steam, and so it is what it is. We got to look forward to 2025. And, that's kind of obviously where I want to get into as well is we see these prospects, Roman Anthony, Christian Campbell. Mayer is seemingly done for the year, but, I mean, he'll at least start next year in AAA. And Kyle Teal. How are you feeling? Let's assume we're done. How are you feeling going into the offseason? Are you more optimistic going into this year's offseason than you were last year? Or is it still kind of down and out until we kind of see what ownership decides to do?
I would say, I don't know if down and out is the phrase I would use. The thing with the Sox is I haven't seen enough of Breslow to have an idea of what they're going to do in the offseason. I haven't looked at any pending free agents outside of Corbin Burns. I don't know of any impact any impact guys that are free agents next year. No, Corbin. No, wait. I think Corbin may have signed a free agent deal. I could have looked at that wrong.
No, Burns. It's the top 3 free agent. Top 2 really is Burns and Max Fried or Fried, whatever his name is. down in Atlanta.
From Atlanta.
Yeah, and then Snell, if he opts out, I don't know. He's got like a $30 million option, so I don't know if he'll opt out of that, but
yeah.
We'll
So
see.
I mean, you figure, well, let's see. So looking at it here, Garrett Cole has an opt out. Don't know if he will.
Yeah, I heard about that. What's left in his deal? Granted, I don't want Garrett Cole in the Boston Red Sox. I hate him too much.
So Garrett Cole remaining on his deal is 4 years at $36 million a season. So what's the math on that? That's $144 million over 4 years. So,
yeah.
I mean, he's going to be 34 at some point soon. He has a late calendar birthday. He turns 34 soon. But again, I mean, I'm not sure, like what the market's going to look like. I mean, Verlander and Scherzer are both free agents, but like, I mean, who knows who's going to, they're not going to get anything other than maybe 1-year contracts. Snell has a player option. Corbin's a free agent, but I have no interest in him. He's too old. Charlie Morton's a free agent. I mean, maybe on a short-term deal. Giolito can opt out, but I don't suspect he will. Evaldi, although his option, I think, vested. So I think he's locked in at another season with Texas, unless they let him go. So it's, I mean, Burns is really the top end guy. I mean, like you said, Fried is also there. But I mean, it's kind of like you got to show it to me first. I'm not going to say down and out, but I'm not. The optimism is kind of where it was a year ago.
I'll believe it when I see it type of feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Again, I mean, this is the first winter that Breslow has, because when was Breslow hired?
October.
So, I mean, obviously he just had a full season with the Sox. And so he goes into, his first off season after his first season. So we'll see. I mean, based on how ownership has restricted spending, I don't see them doing anything drastic.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think comes down to a little bit more is not so much like what to expect from Breslow is what to expect from ownership. We heard the excuse last offseason was they're waiting for these young guys. And so the answer to that now is, well, they're basically here. Roman Anthony could come up tomorrow, I believe, and fully handle himself in the major leagues. His bat to ball skills is, I think, that good. Not that he'll be an instant star, but he could absolutely handle himself right now. Campbell is, again, shredding AAA already. He could be up there. Mayer is probably not going to be up until maybe earliest is July, I would say, next year. But then Kyle Teal also could be up here. Chase Meadroth, the dude just hits down in AAA. He's batting like 304. Like they got a plethora of options. They're gonna have to make a big trade. That's really kind of what it comes down to. And so, what are your thoughts, kind of, Zach, on that? Is like, who? I've kind of been vocal a little bit on X. Who do you see being the odd man out in the outfield? You got Rafaela, who we seemingly think is locked in. He's obviously got the big extension. He's the right-handed bat, and he's the center fielder. That leaves Abreu, Duran, Roman Anthony, 3 guys that there's really no room for all 3. And that being said, they have other outfield options too. So where are you seeing that going? And more so, also, what would be your preference at this moment?
Yeah, I think both of you hit kind of what I was going to say is obviously all the guys you mentioned, Matt, who are coming up next year are all hitters, and they're all, like, none of them are pitchers, obviously, which is our offense is fine. Our top 2 and 3 biggest needs are pitching. So that's one thing that I'm definitely going to focus on. I think the only option that makes sense to move on from in the outfield is Jarren Duran. I know that was your take last week. But it is. I think he has the least amount of team control. He obviously had that whole thing with suspension. And like, outside of him, he is a rising star in the league, but I think you already have guys who are coming up. We've seen Sadon already have signed that big extension for I think it was 6 years or something like that. Will Year continues to show that he can be a big bat and also pretty good in the field as well. So moving on from him would be tough. I think he's a better fielder than Jarren Duran is. Roman Anthony obviously is an outfielder. So now the issue is again that all three of those are, well, I guess Sadon's are righty, but I was going to say like all three of them are lefty bats. So I do think that Jarren Duran is probably the odd man out. Might not be the most unique take, but I think he just makes the most sense of who to move on to. Now, again, I think if you're going to trade him, it has to be someone like a pitcher, like a starter or a front end starter. I think too many of our guys right now are just kind of the same in terms of them being middle of the rotation guys. I think Bayo's ceiling is probably a 2. I don't see him ever really being a number 1, front end starter. Hauk showed signs that he could potentially be there in the start of the season, but obviously we're seeing that kind of fizzle out now. Same thing with Cutter Crawford, and you mentioned Pavetta being who he is. So yeah, I think you have to move someone like Jarren Duran for a front line or at least a innings eating starter.
Yeah, Ben, what about you? Where you look on this? You're muted.
Sorry, I don't know how that happened. I wasn't super high on Jarren Duran. I didn't think he had I didn't think he had the glove to be an everyday center fielder. I think he's fine. He's not elite defensively, but I don't think he's a massive liability. Obviously could be better, but again, it's not like you're putting JD Martinez in the outfield and just covering your eyes and hoping.
Duran statistically has been good this year. He's definitely picked up with his glove, and a couple of years ago he was a liability out there for a couple of years.
Yeah,
but he's definitely improved with his glove this year.
Yeah, but having said that, especially where you have holes in the rotation, the logical move is to move on from him. He probably gets you the biggest return because it can be, Jarren Duran by himself. And I know this is an extreme example. He probably by himself is not going to get you a Corbin Burns quality arm. However, if it's Jarren Duran and a higher end but younger prospect, you could probably get a legitimate arm if you're throwing something else in with the deal, because the team gets a major league ready bat and somebody they can develop in their farm. So he could be the centerpiece of a deal that lands you a legit ace. Because that's really what they're missing more than that, but that's the biggest hole in this roster. There's no ace. There's no stopper that goes every 5 days and is like, jump on my back, we're winning this game. I don't want 1-0 if we have to. It'll be sad to see him go because he really has rounded into a guy that's really fun to watch on a day-to-day basis. Hustles. He's always got a smile on his face. He does whatever he's asked to do. The fans love him. And, he's a good young player that the team can rally around. But given what the team needs, I think if you can trade him and get a legit arm back with him being a centerpiece, I think you have to do it. Because if you're going to trade somebody like Willie or Abreu or Massa, who's not an outfielder, he's a DH. If you're going to trade somebody that's not Jarren Duran, you have to give up a lot more and probably quantity and talent in order to acquire a legitimate player in a position of need.
Yeah, to get Abreu's not getting you an ace. You gotta package Abreu with I don't know if you wouldn't have to package it with one of the top 4 guys, but you'd have to package Abreu with maybe a guy like Blease to go get a legit maybe 2 or 1, something like that.
Yeah. So, it would be sad to see him go because, he certainly proved me wrong. He turned into a better player than I thought he was. I didn't think, just based on, the fact that, this was obviously prior to the rules changing about, the number of pickoffs you can have in a series, the size of the bases, as trivial and marginal of a difference as that may have made. I just didn't think that his skill set would play to a high level at Fenway because, guys don't steal as much as they used to, although they are more now with the base size being different and the fact that once the pitcher's picked off twice, you can push the envelope a little bit because the guy's he probably isn't picking a third time, right? So he kind of rounded into a better player than I thought he would. But logically, it would make sense for him, to move him if you can get a front end starter in return. If you can't get that, then don't trade him. And then figure something else out with the other outfielders.
Yeah.
Don't trade him just to trade him because you have Mayer coming through the system, and it's like, well, better to trade him and get something than to not.
I mean, yes.
I don't know what his control is. He's still in arbitration, so he's still got years left.
Got,
3,
4 years.
4 is it 4? Okay.
Is the way he came up? I think he qualified for a 4th year of arbitration. I think the one thing that I kind of want to make clear, I think you guys would agree, it's not that we don't want to trade Duran.
No,
we're not saying he sucks or we don't want him here. I like Jarren Duran. He's an electric player. I just think that they're going to end up trading him. Like you said, he can return a legit package. If you're a team, now he's done this all this year. Not only that, he's played in every game except for the 2 he got suspended. And he did this for over half of last year. So I think they got enough of a sample size to say this is who he is now. And so he should theoretically return at least a number 2. At least. I know I proposed, just kind of threw out a mock the other day, was sending him to Philly for Christopher Sanchez and Andrew Painter. Painter is a young prospect. He's injured right now with Tommy John, but he was filthy before he got injured. He was in AA at 19, and he's now, once he gets back, he'll be ready for AAA within the year and maybe up within a year. And then Christopher Sanchez is a number 2. He's got about a mid-3 ERA over the last 2 seasons. And he's under a very, very reasonable contract for the next, I think it's 5 more years of control. They extended him last offseason. And I had someone come and say, hey, why would they're not going to trade Christopher Sanchez? They just extended him. And my answer to that is why? Why? Who cares? You extended him last year. If you have a chance, if you want a great player, you're going to give up a good player in the deal. And not that Philly might not want to do that deal because they may say we don't need Duran, we need to keep the pitching. That's fine. But if they want Duran, you're gonna let Christopher Sanchez be the what blocks you from getting him? No. So I mean that's a deal that I could see being done, but the dream is obviously maybe Seattle. Seattle is willing to move one of their top guys. Looking around the league, maybe Miami has a couple guys. I'm sure there will be a market that becomes available more in the offseason, but they should be able to get a top 2 pitcher in the league, top 2 of the rotation pitcher, and then that will ideally put, say, Houck at the 2, Bello in the 3, Crawford in the 5, and ideally you have Giolito for the 4. Or you can add another option if you really want to, which they should still they shouldn't settle for just that 5 if they don't have to. Add another option that could play here. I think there's no shot that they trade Anthony, and I mentioned this. We could finish up with the Sox with this, but the Brewers extended Jackson. Is it Chourio? Is that how you say his last name? Yeah. Before he made his MLB debut this year, signed him to an 8-year, $82 million extension with 2 $25 million options, team options after that. So he's under contract. They signed him to a 10-year of a control for, what is that, $132 million in total dollars. They're only committed to 8 years, 82. Right. I know, Ben, you kind of were a little hesitant on it, but is it something you would, if this offseason you come in and Anthony's open to it, is it something you do? Something you could consider?
Consider, yes. I mean, I would say it's hard to say yes, because if they're going to commit that kind of money, now granted, let's just say it's a comparable deal. You're talking, call it $10 million a year that you're committing to him. I just don't want that to be what stops them or potentially creates them to pause on, say, going out and being in the market for Corbin Burns in the offseason. Because Corbin Burns is going to be a $200+ million pitcher.
Oh yeah, I mean, if $10 million is what's keeping them from spending on a pitcher.
No, but what I'm saying though is, if they say they only have $25 to $30 million to spend in this upcoming offseason based on the budgetary restrictions from ownership, would you rather spend the vast majority of that on Corbin Burns and get a good player that also fills a position of need? Or do you lock up a guy who has zero major league experience to where now you can't go, like, if it's $10 million a year,
if it has to be one or the other, I agree.
Like 15 to 20 million a year isn't landing you a pitcher of substance. Like, sure, it's a depth guy, but it's like, so, and granted, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, it's $10 million a year going to stop them from doing it. I mean, based on what ownership is letting the GM spend, I think $10 million a year on a guy like Roman Anthony does take them out of the market for Corbin Burns, because they're not going to blow past their budget.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if it's one or the other, I agree. I'm just, maybe it's just being hopeful, I guess. I hope that Breslow isn't in that situation where it's like, I can't extend, if all signs point towards Roman Anthony being a star. There has been no point over the last 2 years where he has even kind of struggled for an extended period of time. He has continued to basically put up numbers from the beginning of last year to now. Everything points for him to being a star. So if you could lock him up, once he comes up, it's 6 years. You get 6 years of control, basically.
Yep.
And if he comes up next year, you would get him 21 through 26 years old. You got to think there. He would be coming up pretty early for a player. 21 is obviously on the earlier side. He would be hitting free agency in the center of his prime years. So he would be looking at a huge deal. In this scenario, you extend it from 10 years. You get him until he's 30. Like, you're automatically, and again, it's a risk because he wouldn't have even played in the majors at that point, but you gotta, like, if that can't stop you from spending, like, if that's stopping you from spending on a pitcher, I really might be outside Fenway with signs going after John Henry. I really think so.
If you bring the pitchfork, I'll bring the torch.
Yeah, like that would be, in terms of ownership of the Boston Red Sox. If you're, just the idea of it is baffling to me. But it could happen, like you mentioned.
It's baffling because when you look at it, we've won 4 championships in what is it, 20 years? When are they by the Sox? 02, 03?
15 years.
15 years?
04 to 18.
I thought they bought them in like 02 or so. But
it was 3 and 10 years. 04 to 13. So then 10.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, over the course of since they've bought the team, they've
had 4 titles in the last 22
years.
Last 20 years.
This is the end of their 22nd season owning because they bought the team before 03.
That makes sense. My point is, like, when you look at all the teams they won outside of maybe 13, because that team before was just so bad, and I don't know how much of the 04 team was them, but I know Schilling was, and I know Keith Fullerton was. Like, they went out and they spent money for every single one of those championships, or they went out and they got a Josh Beckett and a Mike Lowell, and they traded, some high caliber players. Hanley was our number 1 prospect in 06. They traded him to go get Beckett. Like, to your point, Matt, this is the Boston Red Sox. You can't have a spending cap or a salary cap, so to speak, if you're this team, especially when guys are out there spending or being paid $30 million plus to be a starting pitcher, like you said, Benny. 15 to 20 is just a Lucas Giolito. It's just another guy, and it sounds outrageous to say that $15 million is just a guy, but that's just the way the market is. So, like, if you look at the history of this team in this city when they won championships with this team, they've done it after spending real capital, trading real prospects. I'm not saying go trade the big three or even the big four, but like we've said before, you have to spend to supplement, and you can't just wait until these guys come up. So like that's what's been so frustrating over the past 5 years or so is listening to, Sam Kennedy, that talking head that I can't stand looking at, and John Henry, and like everyone else just say, oh, we'll push this down the line and we'll spend later on. Like you have to spend. And it's like, it is just wasted breath talking about it because ultimately, it's their call, but it just is what's so frustrating about this team, especially when you look at the past and like there's physical evidence of them spending and winning as a result.
Yeah, they were a top 6 payroll for every year Dombrowski was here. They were the number 1 payroll when they won the World Series in 2018. And don't get me wrong, like just because you're a top payroll doesn't mean you're a good team. I mean, we see that all the time. So I'm not asking them to spend $300 million, but you can't have a $225 million cap for the Boston Red Sox.
Dombrowski made the issue with their mistake of when he like overpaid for Chris Sale, and he made a knee-jerk reaction after 2018. But he was really good at identifying which talent in the minor league system to trade away. Because you look at the Chris Sale trade, none of those guys really worked out. I mean, they've had good careers. They've been up in the league, but no one's really worked out. So he was really good at identifying which players to trade away. And I just,
yeah, I mean, Dombrowski did what he was supposed to do here. Okay,
yeah,
no doubt about that. I mean, like I said, to go back to kind of Roman Anthony, if extending Roman Anthony keeps you as a front office from going after someone like Christian Burns, that could not be further from a red flag to tell you that ownership does not care. They do not care whatsoever. Because you got to think big picture. You would be extending Roman Anthony to save money in the long run, right? Mm-hmm. You'd be extending him to save money in the long run and keep a star here, because you would be buying 4 years, and buying those 4 years will be for like a total of like maybe $80 million. So if you believe he's a stud, in 10 years or 7 years, what is the top player going to be making? 50 million? 50, like the
easily
50, 55, 60 million. I mean, Ohtani's an anomaly, but you'd be saving money. So big picture, I would do it with Anthony. I'm confident enough as him as a player. So, barring the idea that it would keep them out of the Burns situation, I would do it. I would give him that contract, and on the tax, it would count for 10 million or whatever it is, whatever the AAV over the years, that's what it would count on the salary cap. Towards the luxury tax. So if you could sign, just like if you signed that deal, he's only making $2 million next year, but on this luxury tax, it goes in as $10 million. But the good thing, you pay more now, but in the 9th and 10th year, he's still only counting for $10 million on the luxury tax when he's making $25 million. So I mean, I would do it. I think that they need to be aggressive and continue. They did it with Rafaela. They extended Rafaela. What do we have? 30, 40, 50 at bats last year.
Under his,
he played for like a month in the majors, and quite honestly, I'm more confident in Roman Anthony than I was with Rafaela going into this year by a lot. I don't even think it's close. Not even freaking close in terms of confidence to be like a high-end player in the league.
Did Breslow extend Bayo too, or was that time?
Did they expect?
They extended Bayo for like 6 years or something. Like they bought out his arbitration years.
Oh, yes.
And they extended him. I can't remember if it was Chaim Bloom or Breslow.
Yeah, they signed. Yeah, no, they did. It was a 6-year, $55 million deal.
Under Breslow, though?
Yeah, it was in March.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Breslow. I was just looking it up. Breslow signed him back in, like Matt said, he signed him back in March.
What I was going to say is, like, Breslow, if it was Chaim Bloom, it would be a different story. But the fact that it's Breslow kind of paints this in a better picture. He's proven that he's okay doing that. Like, he's proven that he's a guy who's not afraid to extend, a highly touted prospect.
It's the way to go. If you believe,
I mean, the Braves do it all the time. The Braves do it, and they save money in the long run, and that allows them to go get Matt Olson, to go get who's the other guy we just picked up? Whoever they can go, get these guys, to supplement while they're on a relatively cheap salary. They might not be cheap for a 1 or 2 year rookie, but it is for, as you said, a 10-year vet.
Yeah, and so the luxury tax would be 10 million, for Anthony next year, which 10 million for a rookie is not ideal. But in the scenario where they actually could spend some money this offseason, that shouldn't have any effect on what they do in the offseason if ownership actually gives a shit.
If you think he's going to be part of your long term, then 10 million in 10 years shouldn't bat an eye at that, because
the long term.
If
If you believe in the guy, which they clearly do, if you believe in him, it should be a no brainer. I think at this point, he is, and I kind of not joked about this. I said it on the line the other day, and some people were like, "Yeah, you are biased." I don't think it's very biased to say that he is one of or the best prospect in baseball. He's 20 years old. He's shredding AAA. He has in every way excelled. He has shown that at 20 years old, he's on like a 15 to 20 home run pace, which doesn't sound a lot. But if you go back and look at minor league statistics of like a lot of the big hitters, they usually don't hit more than 15, 20, 25 home runs in the minors. Because he's growing. The dude's 20 years old. Think back to when you were 20 years old to now. I was a scrawny little kid that had no muscle whatsoever on me coming out of high school. And so he has shown at least the potential that he can be a 30 home run guy. And so he could I think he'd be a 280 guy, hit 25, 30 dingers, play a good right field, good OPS. He has all the makings to be a stud. So if you believe in him, they should be throwing the bag at him this offseason. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, if you think he's going to be here long term, then you lock him up for long term. And if you believe in him now, then I have no issue with doing that.
Yeah. All right. I do want to transition because I want to be done by this within an hour. We're already gone over. But, big picture for the Patriots, everyone is talking about the one decision. Do you start Drake May? Do you go with Jacoby Brissett? I've been vocal that I want them to start Drake May. Where are you guys on that? And how are you feeling? If you do want to start Drake May, how comfortable are you in that concept? Zach, you can lead us off.
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal on the opposite side of just sitting them, right? I think part of that comes from, we talked about it, the post-match disorder, but all every conversation, every news clip from Gerard Mayo and from Alex Van Pelt has been Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starter. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with giving Drake some extra reps in practice, and even if it's with the twos, then that's fine. You mentioned on Twitter today, what if Jacoby Brissett goes down week 1 and then you're forced to start Drake May as a result of that? It's something you can't plan for, right? You can prepare for it all you want. You can make sure that Drake is prepared as much as possible, but I'm not going into the season okay, well, what if Jacoby Brissett gets hurt? I'm acting as if he's the starter, almost who was it? Alex Smith was with Patrick Mahomes, right? He obviously isn't the long-term future here, but I've been pretty vocal from the start of ease him in when he's ready, and I don't want to necessarily force him in to, especially the O-line. I don't want to force him in anything.
Ben, before I give it to you, the one thing when I kind of asked that was because of the concept of, if you're not playing May, so say they go into the season and say, hey, internally we want to wait till after week 4. They face Cincinnati, Seattle, and then the Jets in San Francisco. The Jets in San Francisco obviously have 2 really good pass rushes. And they say, we want to get through that time. If you're telling yourself as a team, as a front office, we don't want to start him for that stretch, I think you have to theoretically keep Bailey Zappi on the roster. Because if you don't believe in if you don't want him in there, you should be keeping the other veteran on the roster to do so in case that happens. Because again, we don't want to do that because they're worried that May will get his ass kicked physically. So if you believe May will get his ass kicked, Jacoby Brissett could easily get his ass kicked to get injured. So like that's
yeah. No, that's a good point. And I kind of had a feeling that's what was leading to the reason is like keeping Zappe. If you keep Zappe, then he's your number. He's your QB2 theoretically, right? Unless you're moving him, unless you're down there. And I just have a very difficult time putting Drake Maye, who was the 3rd overall pick, as your QB3. Like you're drafting him to be your number 1 at some point. So Zappe, in my mind, is as good as cut. So yeah, I think you keep him as your QB2, and then if for whatever reason he gets hurt or gets killed, then you are just kind of forced to throw Drake Maye in there. But I have a difficult time putting Drake Maye as your QB3.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
So I don't know why you like to throw random things out into the universe. Like if Drake May's not your week 1 starter, you have to keep Bailey Zappe because I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. Although you did force me to have to think about it for like a half a millisecond. So what they should do is, in true Bill Belichickian form, start the guy that gives you the best chance to win the football game, which in my opinion is Drake Maye. If you're now what they're going to do, I'll throw the caveat is I don't think that he's going to be the week 1 starter. I think there might be a little bit of a fear that they're going to pull him what they did with Mac Jones if they throw Drake Maye out there before he should be out there. However, they're going to define that happening. But I've seen enough over the first preseason game doesn't count, but I've seen enough over the last 2 preseason games where I think that the offensive line was fine with Drake Maye. He felt pressure. He slid around the pocket pretty well. I don't think he got sacked. He got hit a couple of times. Obviously, he scrambled out on the deep ball to Osborne when Zach, I don't know if you watched any of the preseason game last night. A core four
got called back, right, or something like that.
Huh?
It was called back.
A core four. That was his 4th time being flagged for being too far off the line of scrimmage. I guess it's going to be a point of emphasis in the NFL this year. Although I think that's just like they're going to do that in the preseason, and then like referees typically do, they're just going to not throw the flag in the regular season. But that play specifically, he rolls out of the pocket, evades a little bit of pressure. But I think that Mayo saying that the offensive line doesn't really dictate what they do. I think that starting Maye makes more sense only because if the offensive line is going to break down, every once in a while, like it looked pretty decent on Sunday night. Now, granted, Washington wasn't playing a ton of their starters, and they've got 2 really good guys up front that if they were starting them, like who knows how that really would have looked. But if the offensive line is going to have its breakdowns, then wouldn't you want a guy who has more natural athletic ability to escape pressure and extend a play over the guy who can't? Now, not saying that Brissett's not mobile at all, but he's not nearly as mobile as Maye is. So it's, to me, Maye can extend the play a little bit, and I understand there's going to be some growing pains, but they should start in my opinion. I just don't think they're going to because I think they're a little bit reserved and they want to make sure that, Mayo said it today that, Maye has outperformed Brissett at the current time, but they're going to factor in other things. I think that that's just a preface for them saying that, when they take the totality of spring rookie camp and training camp and preseason, that it's Brissett over Maye for now. I think that that's a kind of a preface for that. But I haven't seen anything in these last 2 preseason games that makes me think that putting Maye out there from day 1 is detrimental to the team's success. So I think they should start him. I would start him. I just don't think they're going to.
No, yeah, I think one of the biggest issues with the team, or with Drake Maye, I should say, coming out was his footwork. I mentioned this last podcast. To your point, everything I've seen on Twitter and even in watching the games, his footwork seems fine. And I think a big emphasis that they're doing is they're putting him in shotgun more. It sounds like he was under center at UNC, which obviously is highlights the need for good footwork more so than being in shotgun. That being said, I still, as I mentioned, haven't seen his footwork be an issue. He does, as you said, have much more mobility. He's not like a mobile quarterback, but he definitely moves around the pocket, has much more agility in the pocket, and kind of sliding and avoiding pressure that way. So yeah, I think again, I'm strictly coming from the just the PTSD aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I think Jacoby Brissett is one bad pick away from being benched, or maybe it's a multiple week thing. It was just losing games because of bad decisions. But it's only a matter of time before Drake May takes over.
We talk about the concept of once you go to May, you can't come back. Like you can't start him, and if he has a couple of rough games, take him out. The same concept has to basically go for Brissett if you start him. If you're saying we don't want to play May for at least 4 weeks, if Brissett comes out and shits the bed week 1 and looks awful, and then you start Drake May week 2, that makes you look like a fool as a team. It makes you your entire decision look terrible. Now, granted, they might say, I don't give a shit how we look. We're going to go with May now. But that makes you look absolutely terrible. But what you mentioned with his footwork and inside the pocket, that was kind of what sold me last night. And we saw it, the week before and stuff like that as well, that the biggest issue last night was obviously penalties. When they actually snapped the ball and there was not a penalty, not that they were good, they were serviceable. And the biggest thing that I saw with May was the comfort within the pocket. He wasn't, he knows the O-line's not playing very well. And he wasn't moving within that pocket to the point where he was kind of nervous, giddy, or, happy feet, stuff like that. He stood in the pocket. He was able to move left, right, up, back. You could see him keeping his eyes downfield. So everything that you want to see, and branching out to May's game altogether, everything that I think we kind of wanted to see from him, a hope to see from him in the preseason, we've seen. I don't think anything realistically that I was like, hey, I want to see this, that he didn't meet. I wanted to see his mobility. He showed it right early on in the game.
Yeah, third and 14, and he scrambled for the first down.
Yeah, and the dude can move. He can move. I wouldn't call him, like you said, I don't know if a mobile QB, but the guy can move. When he needs to take off, he's as fast as, Josh Allen running the ball. The dude can flat out move, but, he can move. You saw the mobility. You saw the off-platform throws. You saw him solid footwork. You saw him moving in and out of the pocket. You saw him step up in the pocket and make accurate throws. You saw him work through his progressions. Everything you've seen in him, you're comfortable. You should be comfortable with the idea of saying he is ready. And that's what it really comes down to for me. It's never been Drake May or Brissett. And that's the title of this podcast. It's never been May versus Brissett, who's better or who's more comfortable or, all that. It is Drake May ready? And the answer is yes. So in my sense, the O-line will be serviceable enough, barring penalties. But again, penalties isn't getting the QB killed. With Robinson at right guard and Onwenu at tackle, that side's at least solid. I think it will be serviceable at least.
Well,
Robinson,
don't get hung up. That might change.
It could.
Because City So's injured, and Okorafor hasn't proven that he can play left tackle. There's talk about moving Vidarian Lowe back to left tackle, sliding Okorafor to right tackle, and then kick Onwenu into guard.
Yeah, if that's the case and injuries change that, then so be it. But Robinson has shown, again, he had a couple of bad penalties, but he has shown when he's been playing that he can handle himself. And theoretically, he should just continue to improve. Onwenu, we know what he can do at right tackle. He's not like an all-pro, but he's good at right tackle. Not elite, but good. We know David Andrews getting older, but he should, again, be at least middle of the pack center. Sal, if he's healthy, City So, he should be serviceable at left guard. It really comes down to left tackle, and obviously that's the most important one. But again, May looks comfortable within the pocket, and that's the biggest thing for me. If you're really that worried about it, like you said, Zach, like put him in the shotgun a little more. It's a lot easier to being able to see pressure coming if you're already in the shotgun. Keep an extra guy in there if you on occasional throws if you need to. Have wide receivers, bump the edge guys and help out. Have the running back stay in a little bit more often. Like there are little intricacies that you can do within the offense to kind of help aid that left tackle. And so I'm at the point now where I expect it to be Brissett, but it should be Drake May because I think he's ready, and it's kind of it should just be a full go with him because he's the clear cut best QB on this team. Like it's not even close. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Like play the best player.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the analogy, someone said it, is you're dating Jacoby Brissett until you meet your wife. Well, Drake May is your wife, and I'm just waiting until I'm ready to bring her home to my mom. Like we know that Drake May is ultimately who we're going to go with. Now we just have to wait and see if he's actually ready. And again, as you said, you can't go once you go to Drake May, you can't go back. So like, you want to be fully lock solid that he's ready, and obviously he's going to be growing pains. But
yeah, well, that was my biggest thing. Is he ready? In this, like last night, and we saw it in week 2. But seeing it last night kind of solidified it. He's ready. Mm-hmm. Like for what you need, and I'm not saying he's going to come out and ball out, be an immediate top 10 guy. But like for what you look for from a rookie to say, is he ready to start? He has shown all of it. There's been nothing that is overly glaring. Like sure, he's going to miss a throw here and there. He's going to miss a read here and there. He may, make a bad footwork and off platform throw that he needs to clean up. That's going to happen. He's going to make mistakes. You just stick with it with rookie QBs, knowing it's about the long term. But everything we've seen tells us he's ready. So the decision really, in my opinion, for Mayo should just be that. Who's the best quarterback? It's Drake May. And is he ready to play? The answer is yes. Drake May should be the starting quarterback week 1. That's it's the people trying to make this really complicated situation. It's not. Play the best player. He's ready to go. I'm not. And we talked about this with last week with Joe Murray that, and I brought up a few times over the last couple of weeks, is May has played in chaos. And I mentioned it last night. Like he played in chaos at UNC, and I had a couple people saying like, "Oh, ACC pass rush is much different than NFL pass rush." Sure, but like the general concept of playing under heavy pressure is the same exact thing. Like just because it's a kid from Maryland coming down at you doesn't mean you're going to be like, okay, I'll just take this hit. But because it's Nick Bosa, now you can't take the hit. Like what the pressure is the pressure. And he dealt with a ton of it at UNC. He had a mediocre at best O-line. He had mediocre weapons at best. The dude's ready. The more I talk about it, the more frustrated I get because I know it's going to be Brissett, and I'm just going to be fucking annoyed. Oh,
I get it.
Ben, any finishing thoughts on that aspect of it?
Final thoughts? No, I mean, I think you have to play the best guy. I think, regardless of whether Brissett's the starter or the backup, I think that, they're happy with what his role is going to be in terms of a mentorship and, helping get Drake May ready and helping him, stay on track when the time comes and Drake May does become the starter. There's, and I'm not saying you have to play him because of this reason, but there's no buzz around the Patriots. And like Drake May to me has proven that he should be the starter. And if you make him the starter, well, now you're generating buzz because your number 3 overall pick is going to start day 1, which, 6 weeks ago when camp started or whatever it was, when Mayo said Jacoby Brissett's our starter if the season were to start today, nobody really thought, based on what Mayo had been saying all summer long, that May would start week 1. So you get a little bit of buzz there, but you're not doing it for that. I think that's a nice byproduct. But I think you have to start the guy that you think is going to give you the best shot. And I personally think that May gives you the best shot I think he has a better overall skill set. And he'll also help you with, buzz, merch sales, like all the other secondary stuff that teams care about because it affects their bottom line.
Yeah, well, it gives you a face of the franchise. I mean, there was the whole thing last year when, forget who we were playing, but it was the Patriots and someone, and they were getting ready. They were promoting the Pats and Steelers game, and the only guy they could use as the face of the team was Bill Belichick because the team had nobody on the team worthy of a poster. Now they have that potential.
I mean, the buzz difference, depending on who they go with, and again, like I still think it's going to be Brissett, even though I disagree. If they announce Brissett, in terms of the buzz heading into week 1, it will be night and day. Like they announced Brissett, no one's really overly excited to start week 1. No one. And if you start Drake May, everyone's excited to get to week 1. And like you said, Ben, like you don't make your decision off that. Obviously, it's not really a factor in your saying, okay, we'll start him because we need to increase the hype. But
no, it's just a nice byproduct.
Yeah, it's a secondary concept that for fans, like it would be night and day difference.
Yep.
All right. I know maybe catching you guys off guard, but I do want to finish up with state your take moments. So I'll give you a few seconds to kind of think of yours. I'll start us off in. This kid just comes in. Mayo screwed himself by contradicting himself 100 times in the QB battle. He's talked a little too much, but it doesn't matter in the end. Like if they pick Brissett, no one's gonna. He needs to just talk a little less and not contradict himself. I agree, but I don't think it really matters. So screwing himself, I don't know. I wouldn't go there. But all right, yeah. So my state your take is Patriots related. I really liked what I saw from Antonio Gibson the last 2 games. And I don't know so much that it is a huge take, but I think that Antonio Gibson goes over 650 total yards this year. I don't think that's any type of huge, big take. I think Stevenson will be the workhorse, but I think Gibson, at least from what I saw, will be a really nice complementary piece. And I think that a lot of those yards could come from in the pass game. But yeah, I'm going over 650 total yards from Gibson. Either of you ready for yours?
I can go with one. Mine's going to be Celtics related. I think that in a few years, the Celtics will start to regret the Tatum contract that they just doled out or will be doling out. I think that's not just because it's all money related. I think when you look at it in the playoffs, especially where he has sort of fizzled out and kind of taken a backseat, Jaylen Brown has really been the face of the team. He was the face of a lot of the comebacks, especially in the Indiana series. Last playoffs where Tatum shot like 28% from 3 in the finals. Like he really just kind of he did really get into the finals before with like the record-setting turnovers in the entire playoffs. So I think the Celtics will really learn to regret the decision to extend with the Supermax Jason Tatum, and I think it will ultimately lead to them, if they need to, trading the wrong guy, and they will end up trading Brown over Tatum.
All right. That's fair. All right. I like that. Go ahead, Ben. How about you?
So mine, I was trying to think of because I know you've got one tonight and I had one over the weekend. I was trying to think of a solid fantasy football take. And mine is going to be that I believe, and I think this will make Matt pretty happy, that Ladd McConkey will be a top 15 fantasy wide receiver this season.
15.
I think with no legitimate stud weapon in the Chargers offense on really any side of the ball, I think that combined with his skill set is primed for what will be a very, very good season for him. I think the overall numbers on him, as far as projections go, I think are a little bit on the low end. I think, you could very easily see, north of 1,000 yards and, approaching 10 touchdowns this year. I mean, I'd have to look at the numbers and see what constitutes of top 15 fantasy wide receiver numbers wise, but I think his ceiling is a top 15 fantasy wide receiver this year.
I mean, I like it. That's pretty bold. See, the one thing for him is he should be theoretically at worst the number 2. And we're going to look back. I like Polk. I think he's going to be pretty good. And trading back kind of got us Baker as well. So I'm very much okay with the deal. But I think there's a chance that we'll look back and say, like, passing on Ladd was a not great move. I think he's going to be better than Polk. And so we're going to look back. It all really comes down to Baker. If Baker turns out to be a guy, then we probably won't be too upset about it. But if Baker's doesn't end up something big, we're going to kind of look back at that deal and say, we traded a wide receiver 1 for a wide receiver 2. So, yeah, I mean, I like it. I think he's going to be pretty good. But all right, hey, that's going to end us in this tonight.
We're not ending.
Yeah, we're not ending the pod. Yeah, just ending tonight. The Red Sox start back up. I'm in a guillotine league, and I just took CMC first overall.
It's guillotine.
I call it guillotine just because I know it pisses people off when I say guillotine.
As evidenced by what just happened.
Yeah, exactly. I almost took Hill because CMC has a calf injury, and I'm petrified of him not playing week 1 and then me being bounced the first week of the season because of it. But so be it. We'll see how the risk plays out. All right. Until next week. I'm going on my bachelor party this weekend. Benny Ballgame will be there.
Yeah, he won't. Hopefully, you'll come back in one piece.
Yeah, one piece. All right. Until next week. Thanks for listening. We are Raise the Banner.